Hey guys, JB here from Alpha Wolf Consulting, coming to you today with the next session of the Personal Development and Expansion series. So, what we're looking at today is we understand that I've in the past overcome and sort of dealt with the trauma and the negative emotions and all of that. And it's sort of like Sarah mentioned the other day in the other day's discussion, it's sort of like I've overcome the demon. Now what? Like I've achieved my goal. Now what? So in personal development and structuring and creating this ideal self, we first have to tear down the illusions of self. So all those false masks and the false meanings and the activities. Like, for example, if I don't like football, but I say I like football so that I'm included in social circles, like it's a false mask. I don't really care about football. And that's what leads us to feeling that emptiness in life and that meaninglessness is that we cease doing things that mean something to us to create a or to uphold illusions that we've created about who we need to be our ideal self or, to have our ideal life. When in truth, creating the ideal self is a process of discovery and a journey of finding out what do I like? What authentically makes me feel happy moving on in life or experiencing life or what makes me happy in my career? Where do I find fulfillment from what activities? So we understand that in creating the new beliefs, language is an important aspect that influences the beliefs. So when we understand that language is an important aspect that influences the beliefs, we understand that the language is what is going to create the emotive feelings. So when we're creating this new identity of self, what is the language we use around who we are? Do we say, I like myself, or do I say, I love myself? Like, do you sort of get it? Like, it's in understanding, like, when we're putting the bricks back, are we making the bricks out of bales of hay, or are we making the bricks out of granite stone? Like, we get to determine the strength and the meaning and the emotions that we feel from what we believe and what we think and the language that we use. So it's very important to understand this when we're trying to create a new identity of self. We are creating a new meaning to the identity of self. So, like, if I say I'm a kind person, what does that mean? Like, what do I feel when I'm kind to other people? What do I, feel every moment that I'm alive? What do I feel when I'm following my passions? What do I feel when I'm being led astray from the path I want to walk in life? Like it's really understanding the meaning behind it all that allows us to then indicate because the meaning, while it holds significant importance in the emotion, because our emotion is just an experience or a sensational experience in the either biochemical or the physiology. So, like, what we got to understand is the meaning is what is giving the emotion context. Why am I feeling sad is the context to why I feel sad. So we understand that the importance isn't on changing the emotion that we're feeling. The importance is changing the narrative or the meaning that us feeling that emotion has on us. So feeling heartbroken can be a negative sensation where you're feeling that negative loss and that lack of self or self-identity, or it can be an empowering experience where you're realizing the depth of your care for another person. So it's sort of like in understanding the meaning of why I'm feeling heartbroken. If I feel heartbroken because I care deeply for someone else, like that's not a negative thing. It's not negative to care for other people. So we're able to feel positive in the heartbreak. And that's all we're doing when we are recreating or creating self-confidence or self-belief. They are both similar but slightly different. So belief is what I cannot see or feel. Do you sort of understand? Confidence is what I can physically touch and influence. So confidence is certainty of outcome. Belief is like to put it in perspective, a belief in oneself, so self-belief is just the level to which I am willing to back what I say, what I think, what I feel. So if I want to build self-belief, every opportunity I have to build up someone else's belief over my own, i.e., self-doubt, if someone says, "Oh, you might fail at this," but what do you mean? I'm the one that's in it. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm the X factor that's going to alter the environment and the circumstance to get the result that I want in the context of, you know what I mean? Like I'm going to do it until I become good at it. I'm not just going to do it for the time frame that people say it takes to become successful. So it's sort of like in understanding self-belief, it's that belief in self to go beyond the limits, to go into the unknown. Because we don't have self-doubt about making it to the fridge to get a sandwich. Do you know what I mean? I know I can make it to the fridge to get a sandwich. So it's in understanding that self-doubt is in aspects of the unknown of self. So if I'm trying to do something I have never done before, or if I'm doing something that like I don't know if I'm good at it or not. And this is where self-belief to really effectively create change within self-belief, what we must do is create self-validation. So we got to, in self-belief, it doesn't matter if I'm right or not about if I'm a good person, but if I believe I'm a good person and I act like a good person, I'm a good person. Like it doesn't really matter if I'm right or wrong. So if I'm, for example, if I'm trying to achieve a goal that I set out, it doesn't really matter if I achieve the goal. If I take the activities or the actions that result in the achievement of the goal. So, for example, if I wanted to lose weight, and I know diet and exercise are the things that lead to losing weight, if I just diet and exercise, even if I don't lose weight, like I've still succeeded. Do you sort of get it? Like it doesn't really matter because the goal isn't what we're trying to achieve. It's the belief in self of achieving the goal. So what we do is we alter it. So when we're creating these new beliefs or we're having self-doubt, what we're doing is we're altering our self-belief to impose like belief in self over belief in others. It may fail for them, but it's not going to fail for me because failure, I know, is just giving up. So we don't fail until we give up. It's sort of like if we make an investment in the stock market, it can go up 1,000%, but we haven't made any money until we take the action to sell. So if we just understand this, that it doesn't really matter the end result. What matters is the becoming someone who believes when I set out to do a diet or an exercise regime, like I know I'm going to show up and do it. Like I have that belief in self that my words, my thoughts, my actions, my emotions are all in alignment towards what I want. So all it takes to create self-belief over self-doubt because these are natural processes as well. So the self-doubt is always going to come. Self-doubt doesn't go away. We just become better at understanding self-doubt. Hey, Grant.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Yeah, good, good. It's just me and you for now.
Sorry, I just put my video on, just rejoined, so
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
realize it was
awesome.
Brisbane time.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I thought it was going to be like that. That's how it was for the last girl. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Grant.
Sure. Where should I start? Not sure where to begin.
Wherever. Like
Okay.
the best part is right. It doesn't matter, like, it's not about having a structure or anything like that. It's
Yeah,
about having the ebbs and the flows of the conversation. So a
sure.
funny thing I noticed within myself is whatever's on my mind that I'm thinking about or that I'm trying to problem solve or overcome, naturally I'm going to talk about it all the time. So all we do is we just do like talk about whatever you want, like what sort of interests you in personal development and sort of what are you trying to achieve within yourself?
I guess look, going back a few years,
Yeah,
had some very serious health issues, was
yeah,
in ICU for 2 weeks with organ
wow,
failure and so forth. And
yeah,
then a 9 year relationship broke up.
yeah,
And then spent about a year in isolation, just trying to physically heal
yeah,
um, because massive health setbacks. And then now it's really just about self-improvement through
hmm,
various channels of teachers
yeah,
and mentors and trying to go, well, I'll put other people first for most of my life. So where
yeah,
do I improve on putting myself first now? So how do I
yeah,
improve myself day to day?
hmm,
I have the luxury of not having kids, so I don't have a lot of distractions.
yeah,
I do have one very spoiled dog who's wandering around the house somewhere, but look,
yeah,
as long as he's fed and sheltered, I've got the freedom to do what I want. So at the moment, I'm really
overburdened with choice.
just exploring,
Yeah,
things through the community,
hmm,
attending these online sessions. Some
yeah,
are free and some are paid for, and some people I go that really resonates with me, and other people I'm like, maybe I'll skip that one. But
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's with everyone. I think that in a nutshell is really where I'm at, and I'm
yeah,
just in the, I guess you could say, the infancy of re-establishing myself as the person I want to be. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And what I've personally found is it's just a process of like sort of self-realization of who you want to be and then understanding. So, what's his name? Alan Watts. I got a lot of my understanding and conceptualization of Tao and sort of Zen philosophy from Alan Watts. And they believe that there is no future, there is no past, there is only the present, here and now. So
Okay.
I experienced yesterday as today. I experience tomorrow as today because I only conceive and understand the present. Do you know what I mean? I don't understand
Mm,
time because essentially it doesn't exist because it's the same moment, like just playing in
mm,
continuation. So what they believe is that as soon as I think or I want something, I have already achieved it because there's nothing to achieve. So it's sort of like in who I want to be in life. If I wanted to be a kinder person, I can say I want to be a kinder person, and if I do this, this, and this, I'm a kinder person. Or I can just embody kindness in each of my actions. Like I don't really have to try.
mm.
So a funny thing that just recently on my walk is I struggled a lot with selflessness. So putting other people before myself and feeling bad, putting myself, sort of first. And the funny thing I realized when I thought on this is like selflessness is like a victim mindset because it's like I have to serve everyone else at the expense of me.
Mm,
Whereas I realized selfish service. So I serve myself. So it's sort of like if I want to help people, like I do through this, it's like I'm not helping people to help them. Helping people makes me feel good about myself. So I'm making myself feeling good about myself by being of service to other people. So it's sort of like the more I serve other people, the more I feel better about myself. But it's in understanding the difference between like in selfless service, I have to help people in a certain way. There's expectations on how I help them. Like
mm,
you know what I mean? Whereas in
mm.
selfish service, it's like, how do I want to show up? So it's like in your life, in becoming your ideal self, it's like, how do you want to show up every day? Like, how do you want to serve people? Like, do you want to serve people through talking with them? Do you want to serve people through connecting with them? Do you know what I mean? Because it's in that understanding that service is what we're all sort of looking for in terms of meaning. And it's sort of like, I can serve people by creating great products or services, or I can serve people by working for them, and doing service through that. Do you know what I mean? I can create community programs. Like, so in any action that you want to do that connects you with other people is how you serve them. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, I do follow.
Yeah,
My career after I left the army was
yeah,
in IT, and look, it still is in IT. I haven't retired yet, but it's very
yeah,
much
yeah,
a what's the term we use? It's a servant leadership
yep,
oriented role whereby we are servicing the business
hmm,
in their needs
yep,
uh, and fighting for our own initiatives
yeah,
within that. But in the same process, I'm consulting
hmm,
outside of certain companies. I'm helping people without charging them for simple IT advice.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And in return, I'm saying, well, what do you do? And sort of networking in
yeah,
that way,
yeah, exactly.
not for financial gain, but it's more
Because it
for
makes you feel good.
it's just an appreciation of
Mm,
I look, I know a lot in IT and
yeah,
business, but I outside of that area, I don't know as much, and I'm happy to learn
mm,
and be the student still at
mm,
my age. Ironically,
yeah,
I'm still studying, and I will be for a few years, but
yeah, yeah,
it's just a matter of sharing the knowledge and saying, well, this is what I've experienced and what I've thought of, and
hmm,
have you tried this? And I recently met a bloke, and
yeah,
he said, "Look, I've got a website. It's on page one of Google." I said, "Congratulations." He goes, "I have no idea how I got there." I broke it down for him. I said, "This
yeah.
is what happens, but if you're on page one, just keep doing what you're doing."
Yeah.
It's just
Do you
there
sort
was
of
no.
see, do you sort of see just in that example, it's like you can think I need to know how to do it before you do it, or you can just do it and wind up on page one. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
he's
So
been
with
established for
personal
about
development, it's the
yeah.
exact same, but it's also especially with what you've said, like we're thinking in logical terms through the conscious mind about the logical aspect of your actions. And now it's about, and especially in creating the ideal self, it's based in feeling. So it's thinking about when you are serving and helping other people, it's really focusing on how do I feel in that moment when I'm connecting with them? How do I feel? Because that's the association that sort of like that passion is. Because it's sort of like this. If you were deeply in love with someone, it's effortless to be with them, right?
Mm,
So it's sort of like, how do I create that level of being in love with the actions that I do each day, and who I embody as myself. Do you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
about being authentic with, like, I serve you how I like to serve. It doesn't
Mm.
mean that I'm your slave. It's that,
No.
I'm reaching out my hand and helping you are with what I know. And it's in that understanding that I don't know everything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Alan
There's a
Watts
sense.
has a really, really good way of putting this that helps me get it into perspective. But it's like, if you look at a lawn, like, we don't know one blade of grass in all of its sort of like fullness. Like, we don't understand it. We don't see the detail on it. So it's like, when you look at a lawn, you look at it like, I already know what that is. Whereas if you look at it from the point that, like, I could never know what every blade of grass looks like. Do you know what I mean? It
Mm.
creates reverence and all of that. So it's in understanding that, like, to know, and I had this in understanding sales, but it's like, for me to say I know, like, I'm an expert in sales, is for me to say that I know everything that sales entails currently and will entail in the future. So I'm trying to box it into being like stagnant when it's in flow. So when I
Mm.
say the point isn't for me to know everything, but the point of me is to, like, flow with it, it becomes a lot easier to lose that ego of, like, when you get pulled into the superiority of, I
Mm.
know everything, I don't need to know more. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do because I've kind of gone through that myself,
Yeah.
and I think this is the step that I'm at now. Is that I used to think I knew everything. I was very good at what
Yeah.
I did. Um,
And
going
it's
into hospital and
liberating,
so
hey.
forth. Going into hospital and so forth, things
Mm.
changed. I became very humble, and then just went, well, what else don't I know? And started learning things that I didn't know. And in
Yeah.
IT, everything is fluid because it's
Yeah.
constantly changing. You
Yeah.
cannot be a master of everything.
No.
And I'm just going with the flow, and I'm learning from people like yourself, and I've
Yeah.
got
Yeah. Yeah.
some other people that are helping me out, and I'm learning more about myself. I've become more
Yeah.
calm, more focused, and
Yeah.
look, still ambitious. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
very humble. And when speaking to people, it's not like, oh yes, I've done this, 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 and this. It's
Mm.
if you want to know what I've done, just read the resume and then just ask me the questions,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
sort of thing. So yeah.
And it's sort of like, in being in that way, a funny thing is I realized in my own learning, because I've been a life learner, I love the process of learning, is that if I believe what you're telling me to be inaccurate or infactual, that I know more than you, like, I'm never going to remember what you say because it's deemed as not being valuable information. So what I
Mm,
realized is it's the value we put onto who we're speaking to. So, like you said, being willing to listen, being willing to hear what other people have to say without the need for me to dictate what it needs to be or what it should be. Do you know what I mean? So I
yeah.
found that in learning, if I found great people who I personally trusted, that they were telling the truth and that they were just being authentic and honest, and I believed everything that they said to be true, because we all tell the truth, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, we don't go around telling ourselves that the sky's green. Like,
Mm,
if we see blue, we say blue.
yeah.
So it's in understanding that I was able to, I like, research and identify, like, in my field, key theories or key theses
Yep.
that people put forward, and I devoted all my time to that. So it's just in understanding that process of, if I believe and trust what you say is valuable and true, my memory will store it at a higher rate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a little cool thing for learning. Um, if you want, like in terms of understanding the mind, so in understanding personal development, all we're trying to do is, like you said, understand this one and this mind. Do you know what I mean? It's like a
Yeah.
process of learning, like an IT system. It's a process of learning the system so that I understand it. And our minds work pretty much the same as like a computer program. So our thoughts are programming our subconscious emotions and feelings. So it's sort of like the more control or the more structure I have in my mind, the easier it is for me to navigate my mind. So a funny thing is that right now I'm speaking to you out of just my conscious hemisphere,
Mm-hmm.
because my conscious hemisphere is like whatever I'm focused on. So if I was emotionally unstable, angry, and all of that, I would be speaking out of my subconscious mind
Yeah.
because like we have finite focus. So a funny thing is that my left hemisphere is controlled by my right hand. My right hemisphere
Mm.
is controlled by my left hand. So when I cross hemispheres, I activate simultaneously both hemispheres. And you'll sort of hear a tonal shift where I'll start to gain access to emotions and my tone will start to change and alter. So what this means logically is like if I'm only ever doing the personal development in my conscious mind, I don't feel. So I know I'm a good person and all of this, but I don't feel like a good person or I don't feel it. So it's an understanding how to access the subconscious that we're able to start implanting programs and subroutines. So if you think about a language pattern or a belief as simply being a synaptic pathway, the more I say the same thing, the stronger the synaptic pathway
Mm-hmm.
becomes. So basically, what we're trying to do is our brain naturally looks for the easiest way or the shortest route. So if you think about it in terms of like sort of like software, like I'm not overly technical, but basically, the more bandwidth we give a thought, the easier it is for our brain to fire that thought. So the more resistance there is to any other thought.
Mm.
So that's why when we go through negative experiences, they can become so traumatizing because we replay, and that synaptic pathway becomes so strong. The slightest hint at that sort of environment or situation instantly triggers that trauma. So that's what we're trying to do consciously when we're implanting into our subconscious anything that we want. So if I want to be a kinder person, I activate both sides of my hemisphere and then I just repeat. Like,
Mm.
I'm a kind and loving person. I'm a kind and loving person. And we're repeating it. And this is part of conditional learning. So we're just repeating it and strengthening that synaptic pathway to when I think about myself, the language pattern that runs is I am a kind person. You know what I mean? Not I
Yeah, I do.
am useless. I am, because that's what we're trying to sort of work out. Do I have any negative language in my subconscious that I need to reprogram out? And then how do I artificially overwater the positive things I want to think and feel about myself on the daily? Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. Yeah, I follow.
Yeah. So it's sort of there's a couple of processes I have, but the main one is when I'm just in my conscious hemisphere, I don't really have any understanding or experience with emotions. So emotions are a bit confusing to me. If someone's
Mm.
acting irrationally, I don't really understand why. When I'm in my subconscious mind, I don't have access to language or logic. So a funny thing to understand is our brain doesn't understand like the size or the difference in the experience. So how traumatic something traumatic happening to us is
Mm-hmm.
determined by our mind. So we could see ourselves as being, so to speak, shot as being a life-threatening injury, or we could see it as being sort of like a light wounding. So understanding that there's no rationale in the subconscious, if I'm feeling, let's say, for example, heartbroken, and it feels like, the world's ending and it's never going to, get any better, like I understand that there's no rationale driving that. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
And it's in understanding that we're able to curtail or lose those overly negative things. So, for example, if I'm going for a big business contract and I'm stressed and anxious about, what it could mean if I win it, what it could mean if I lose it, well, I'm
mm,
able to understand that those feelings of stress and anxiety aren't really real because my subconscious mind that's creating it doesn't really understand the scale. Like it doesn't have that logical aspect. Because that's a big thing that we always do is with our fears, we try to make them seem logical, but they're being based out of something that's illogical. Do you know what I
mm.
mean?
That resonates. Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I do follow it. It's just the way you phrased it. Yeah,
yeah,
it's just hitting home. So yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No, I
yeah.
completely agree. It's no one's phrased it that way for me. So
No, no.
that makes some food for thought. I'm gonna take that away and
Yeah.
think on that one.
Now, an
Yeah,
important thing to understand just about any reprogramming is it's going to try to run the subroutine that it's already been running
of course.
again and again and again. So we're forcibly overriding it. So it's like every time I go control V, the computer wants to put up the last paragraph, not the paragraph I've copied. Do you know
Mm,
what I mean? I'm just going to keep doing it until that computer puts it like to an extent. Do you know what I mean? On a
yeah.
computer, that wouldn't work because it's got a finite memory. So it's not going to change, what you control C. But it's just in understanding that my subconscious mind is going to resist the change that I'm trying to put in. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create the association. So sort of like Pavlov's dog. That's how conditional learning or
Mm,
conditional association works. So it's sort of like if every time I feel a negative emotion, or every time I feel sad, I say sad is a negative emotion, like I am conditioning myself to expected outcomes. So when I feel sad, I have to feel bad about myself. But I could have it conditioned to when I feel sad, like there's a reason for it, or I see the positive in it. Like how I did this within myself is that I reassigned the meaning of sad to be like this is an experience that I'm feeling. So like I'm not experiencing the emotion as myself. I'm experiencing myself experiencing the emotion. So it's sort of in understanding that our conscious mind and our subconscious mind are basically the computer for the body, and they're controlled by the higher consciousness, which is like our understanding of consciousness. And the reason for this is if I am the conscious mind, or if I am the subconscious mind, if I am the conscious mind, I am stuck with whatever thoughts happen to be in my head are who I am. If I'm the subconscious mind, my emotions that I feel and my subconscious behaviors are who I am. So it's sort of like we can either see ourselves as the axe or as the axe cutter. If I'm the axe and I'm blunt and I want to sharpen myself, I need a miracle from God to be able to sharpen me. If I'm the
mm,
axe cutter, it's effortless because I can do it. So what that means is if I identify my identity as being just my thoughts, my ego, you know, the sort of the material world, or I see myself as being, victim to my emotions. My emotions are what make me or who make me me. I'm not able to pick and change what I think or what I feel at will. If I'm the consciousness that uses the brain and the emotion, so like our logical consciousness or like the conscious aspect of our brain is all about outside, about being able to find food, shelter, water. and all
Mm,
of that. Like our emotions and our subconscious mind is all about preservation of self. So our emotions drive behavior, but it's in connecting with others, in like prolonging the species, so to speak, in the developmental of the species. So when we became more community based and living in larger populations, our brain had to evolve and overcome, because there's a difference from living in the wilderness by
mm,
yourself to living around 1,000 people. So if we understand that, we just understand like my emotions are relevant because they help me connect with other people. They're a tool I use to connect with other people and to indicate and direct behavior. So naturally, we find it effortless to move to what we enjoy or what we like, and we find it difficult to move, or we find it easier to avoid what we don't like. So if I determine the meaning of what I want in life to be everything that I like, so for example, if I wanted to study, like if I tell myself every time I'm studying, I enjoy this, this is exactly what I want to do, this is what I want to sort of, this is where I want to be at this point in time. If I do that on condition, like Pavlov's dog, every time I think about study, that'll be running. Do you know
mm.
what I mean? So,
Yeah, it's similar to neuro-linguistic
yeah,
programming for
yeah.
the psychological. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's all really similar. So I took the best parts of my understanding of them and sort of created processes and practices for me. So like crossing the hemisphere is Psych K, psychology
yep.
kinesiology, just understanding that body movement alters how the brain operates. But even like if you know Sadhguru,
No,
no, he's an Indian yogic. But he has a yogic posture of crossing the legs, crossing the hemispheres that he takes before he can speak. And he even mentions that, I couldn't, if I'm just sitting here, speak with wisdom, because it's sort of like we're using the positioning of the body to access different aspects of our mind and our conscious understanding. Yeah.
yeah,
So it's really interesting on that. And then it's just in understanding, especially in NLP, the neural linguistic reprogramming, is that when we're dealing with the past emotions or those experiences, we're not seeing them as if we are the person who experienced them, in terms of like, if I'm dealing with past trauma, I'm not experiencing that past trauma when I'm doing the NLP as the child, as that younger version of me. I'm seeing it as me now. So it's sort of like in embodying who I want to be, like in my actions and my behaviors and my mannerisms and how I speak and the things that I do. Like I'm sort of like, whenever I get self-doubt or anything like that, or I start doubting who I am, like I'm not looking at that self-doubt as the old me that it's trying to drag me back to. I'm seeing it from this new complete self. Do you know what I mean? And at a
yeah,
certain point in time, that identity just becomes more comfortable. So it's sort of
mm,
like atomic habits, creating new habits.
yeah,
Like we're just creating habits in the identity of self. So like if I wanted to, for example, exercise more, if I create part of my identity as I exercise 2 hours every day, like that's who I am. It's sort of like we're sort of like doing that hack.
yeah.
Yeah. But what do you sort of get into in terms of like understanding your mind? Like you mentioned you've done some NLP. How did you find that?
I did the NLP, the Psych K, the CBT,
Wow.
all post car accident.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
trying to deal with PTSD
Yeah.
or complex PTSD as it was labeled.
Hmm.
Um, and I think honestly the guy who introduced me to Psych K
Yeah.
got me to feel comfortable to drive again after the accident.
Yeah.
And to put things into
Did
perspective,
you notice just with that that it wasn't that your thoughts changed? It was like it was something within your mind had changed.
yeah, yeah. But it
So
was
like
a
when I did Psych K, I went and I had a mental breakdown because the material society wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I'd reached success and then I didn't feel anything and had an existential crisis. But I got put on there because I had really low self-worth issues. So like even though I did all these things, I didn't feel good about who I was. So she put me onto it and we did a session on it. And then it wasn't that anything really changed in my external environment, but within the internal environment, like there was a change. So when I thought about myself, it was a different feeling, a different emotion came up. Do you know what I mean?
mm, mm.
And that's all we're trying to do consciously.
Yeah, the car accident I was
Mm,
lucky to walk away from, and it took me years to get myself back to driving and so forth.
yeah.
I did a program called I think it's EDMR or EMDR as
Okay.
well.
What was
And
that about?
that was it's about retraining the subconscious so that you are no longer driving the fear of the PTSD in
Yeah.
such a manner that it consumes you.
Yeah.
And that got me to feel more comfortable that I was still okay to perform my work duties and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was something I privately funded it.
Yeah.
Look, it certainly wasn't cheap, but it was helpful when I'd exhausted the Psych K, I'd exhausted the
Yeah.
CBT and all the regular psychology and so forth.
With
Um,
with the PTSD, like from my childhood, like I only call it minor because, while there was physical danger and physical violence, I never was sort of, I didn't end up getting bashed or killed or
mm,
anything like that. But basically, when I was between the ages of 8 and 14, I used to like to walk around the town and the city that I grew up in. And what would happen is like all the time, I used to have 40, 50-year-old dudes stop me and threaten to gutter stomp me and bash me and try and kill me.
mm,
And I'd have to run away and stuff like that. So it caused me to like form like PTSD, like which is sort of like, that heightened alert or awareness. Like I had to like the lesson I taught myself from that is whenever I was in public, I had to be willing to fight to the death to defend myself. Like, because that's what the environment had taught me. And
mm,
that led me to having a lot of like, I always had to have anger within me. I always had to have like hold on to those emotions and those experiences. And like it was only recently that I overcame the anger like last year. And what I realized was I was trying like because I didn't know how to let go to, what those people had done. You know what I mean? So like when I walked around outside, those memories were always on replay. And they would always lead me to be highly agitated and highly stressed and alert and always preparing to defend myself. But basically what I realized, or I didn't even realize it, but I got to a point where I had to say, like, and I just said, like, I don't know how to get rid of this anger or,
mm,
this stress, but I want it to be gone. And the thing I realized afterwards was like, it wasn't the next day that it was gone, but I was a little bit happier, a little less angry. I didn't think about attacking people when I was out in public. Like, so what happens is when I'm trying to fix a problem and I'm never letting go to control of being the one with the hammer, like my mind, like my subconscious mind and my conscious mind don't have the ability to take any actions because I'm trying to drive the car, so to speak.
Mm.
So it's in that moment of admitting to yourself that I don't know how to solve this, I don't know how to fix this, and just letting go to it. Like, this is just something that I want to do for myself. I've tried, I understand it, but I don't know how to let it go. And that's sort of the process of letting it go, is that acceptance and admittance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of walking through that phase myself at the moment.
Yeah.
The acceptance and the letting go through. There is an element of mental and emotional processing,
Yeah. Do
as you
you
sort of
do you
go
want me to
through.
yeah, do you want me to tell you about, like, so like dealing with emotional trauma?
Yeah.
I like I had a lot of emotional trauma, and growing up I always was told to repress it, to suppress it, like men don't feel emotions and all of
Mm,
that.
mm,
And what happened was is that, like, I locked my emotions away, but they weren't controllable. So I realized that one day when I had a girl that I was with decided, I wasn't the guy she wanted to be with, and she wanted to be with another guy. And it was pretty, I was having that pity party of feeling sorry for myself.
yeah.
And it was a long line of the same event, the same cycle continuing of that happening. And I got to the point where I said to myself, like, when I was feeling emotional and I was about to tell myself, to repress it and to sort of like get rid of those emotions. Instead of that, I decided to lean in. So it's a process of, if I repress my emotions, I don't view them, I don't understand them, I don't see them.
Mm,
If I'm not looking at the fire in the corner of the room, I don't know how big it is.
yeah.
So it's this process of leaning into them, but sort of dragging yourself artificially to the bottom, to the worst case.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So, like,
Yeah.
instead of me just feeling like, this is someone I just met and they don't want to be with me, it's sort of like I dragged it out to, I'm never going to be with another person. Like, I imagined and sort of visualized my whole life to 80 years old, never having an emotional connection with someone or an intimate connection with someone. And then what happens is when we drag ourselves to the bottom, a simple choice is always presented. Is this my reality or is it not? And when
Mm,
I reject that as being my reality, so like for example, with the anger, I rejected the anger as not being a part of me. Now moving forward, whenever that thought or that emotion tries to take control, like, I know it's not a part of me. Do you know what I mean?
so you're trying to separate the anger from yourself, but
Well, it's sort of like you're rejecting that option or that path in life or that timeline or however you want to see it as not even being one of consideration. So now all of my focus is on what I'm building. So when we're rebuilding ourselves back up, do you know what I mean? So if I sort of think about it like a foundation, if I'm pulling down the foundation because it's built on illusions and masks and false personalities, like, if I try to sort of mask over one of them and leave one section of the wall, when I build up my new foundation, that's always the weakest point.
mm,
So when we're sort of working through and dealing with our emotions, I have to tear that emotion to be as painful as it can be, because once I've experienced it in its full breadth or depth of pain, no other aspect or scale of that pain can ever hurt me again. Do you know what I mean?
sort of.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, if I experience my emotion fully and let myself just experience every aspect of it, like, no aspect of it is unknown to me or scary or fearful, because we fear what we don't understand.
mm,
And when
mm.
we understand it, so like for example, understanding the physical experience of the emotion, because it's usually the physical traumas that that create the association. So when I feel this way, my mind starts playing all the memories and all the meanings that I've associated to feeling this way.
Mm.
So like in Psych K, we're oh well, maybe it's not in Psych K, but basically what I do is I reprogram. So emotions
Yep.
are influenced by meaning and the memory associated to that meaning. So if I have a painful emotion, like let's say loss, and I associate loss as the meaning of people being taken away from me, all the memories of people being taken away from me are going to flood in when I feel that feeling. If I then change the meaning manually, so every time I feel loss, and that meaning of people getting taken away from me is I artificially change that to it's me giving people to life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
giving back. So I'm changing the meaning from being one of taking away to one of giving back. Now I have to alter the memories. So the images and the thoughts and all of that. So those experiences, because our subconscious only understands on experience,
Mm.
whereas our conscious understands on like outcome. So it's sort of like with conscious thoughts and beliefs, it's all assigned to the meaning of the outcome. I don't touch the stove because it burns my hand.
Mm.
So sort of like when we understand that, it's like the meaning. So my subconscious mind doesn't really have any structure, like I mentioned before.
Mm.
So it doesn't have any structure. So if I associate the meaning of loss to be to anything, me giving back to life, now I associate meaning the memories of being positive memories where I gave to people, where I gave back that experience or the feeling of giving. Every time I feel loss, that experience or the feeling of giving is going to be artificially run. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I do.
So it's sort of like in understanding that, we just get that like I'm not dictated by the experiences I've been through. I'm dictated by the meaning or the stories or the narratives that I create for those experiences. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And then do you utilize those past experiences, both good and bad, in a way to focus energy into maybe a self project or
No, no, because
building discipline?
it's sort of like this. If I'm thinking about goals in terms of the outcome, so to speak, like it's sort of like this thing that I'm trying to do. If I see goals as becoming, who I'm going to become as a journey towards that. So,
Mm,
like for example, if I see working out to get to lose 50 pounds, or I see working out to build my body up, like one of them has a finite sort of like a finite like time frame, so to speak.
mm,
If I achieve the goal, then I lose all meaning towards the goal. So I think of goals in terms of like milestones and markers. But when it comes to the pain or those past experiences and like trying to use pain to move forward, an important thing is to understand that there is no meaning in life, but the meaning you give to life.
mm,
So life itself, the universe has no meaning. If a tree falls, the forest doesn't cry. But it's like when I look at a forest, give meaning to it. So what
mm,
that means is that meaning is not objective, it's subjective. So there's no overarching truth in life. We all have truth within us.
mm.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
whatever means something to you in life is the meaning for you in life. So
Mm,
you know what I mean? So we can get rid of all the stuff that we don't want to have in us. So like for example, if we think about using loss to move forward, I can use that connection of that friendship Because you think about it like this, our brain doesn't really understand experience. So if I close my eyes and I think about, like, let's say my best friend, and I think about a time that we were having a good time laughing and just hanging out, and I'm doing that, like my body is creating the physical sensation that I felt there.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's a way to biohack the biochemistry. So if I want to feel that connection and that like that friendship, the oxytocin, which
Mm.
is the chemical that causes us to feel connection. All I have to do is think about the moments I felt connected with my friends, and I can use that as my empowerment rather than having to use the pain to sort of push myself. Like I can either choose positive or negative associations. So I can choose empowerment to give me all of my strength, or I could choose pain to sort of give me all of my strength. Do you know what I mean?
But could you
Yeah.
not utilize elements of that pain and struggle and so
Yeah, yeah,
forth
yeah.
to motivate you in a positive way? And
Yeah.
it's like exhausting a battery. If you use those negative experiences to
Like
build,
David Goggins.
yeah, yeah, I read his book years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sort of using those negative experiences to power you forward for something more positive.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. You
um,
you you can, but the key
yeah.
is just remembering like you're the one determining positive or negative. So you can use that memory or that experience in a positive way and it can be a positive benefit. Like you don't
Mm.
have to identify it as a negative experience. Because if you
No, no,
identify it, but you know what I mean? So like
not
we can use
necessarily. Yeah,
mm,
not necessarily a negative experience, but it may be like a
like
painful memory, or
hardships. Yeah.
yeah, and just taking that, and a situation where you felt that you weren't in control, or you
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
anger taking over you, and then you
Yeah.
go, well, I'm going to divert that feeling, and I'm not going to class it as anything, but
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to go and do something positive with it. So it's
Yeah, so
almost
you're
like emotional
reassociating
alchemy.
it to
Yeah,
now a positive experience or outcome.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's part of the reprogramming.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
But it's
yeah,
like sort of like, for example, aggression and anger aren't negative experiences. They're positive in the sense that we need aggression and anger for defense, for
of
survival,
course. Yeah,
for motivation. Like, you know what I mean? If you've ever been at the gym and you're having a bad day and you're working out, like if you're angry, like you're focused.
yeah.
But it's sort of like if I see anger as being negative within me, it sort of holds that negative energy. If I see anger as being positive within me, it holds that positive energy. Do you know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, and I'm just trying to
Mm,
transfer those feelings into something, because look, I come from the army, and naturally
mm,
we were taught to be aggressive and
yeah,
so forth. But there's a thing of situational control,
yeah.
aggression. But now
And there's
I'm,
also that push and pull in life.
yeah,
Of sometimes I need to be aggressive and move towards my
yes,
goals. Sometimes I need to stop,
yeah,
analyze, assess the terrain. And it's sort of like think about it like this with all of those experiences and all of those sort of like, because the military did exactly this process. Boot camp's about breaking down your identity of
yeah,
self and then recreating a new identity within the unit, within the structure. That's where I got a lot of my understanding around team development and leadership is from the military because in the army, for example, when you're in combat, like you don't have anyone to rely on but the guy next to you. Do you know
mm,
what I mean? So
yeah,
like you need to have that high level of teamwork, team cohesion, that trust and all of that. And it's like, how do you take all those good aspects that the army instilled in you? And it's sort of like, the army's about tempered aggression.
mm,
Like we're not uncontrollable. We think about and strategize where we're going to strike.
yeah,
Do
of
you know what I
course,
mean?
yeah,
So it's like amplifying the meaning of aggression to now be like, like strategized aggression. Like I analyze the environment or the situation, and then I make my move. And it's just adding in those extra words. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah.
And then and then sort of creating that sensation or experience of the emotional meaning of it. So like when you think about like aggression, it's sort of like we're not trying to amplify the negative meaning of or feeling of aggression where it's like beating someone's head in until it's a pulp. It's sort of like we're trying to find those positive emotions and repress or ignore the negative emotions and just focus really on those positive emotions and sort of letting that become the experience we feel when we think about it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no, I do understand what you're saying. I think it's
yeah,
I'm
because
as I
you've
mentioned,
already, by the
I'm
sounds
still.
of it, you've already done so much work on it.
Oh, look, I've been yeah, look, I guess the last couple of years I've been working, but
Hmm.
it's there's no guidebook or rule book. It's very
No,
much a
no.
matter of trial and error.
Yeah, but
You know,
you have the guidebook right here.
y-
Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah, but
your
it's going
personal
to.
experience is the most valuable information when it comes to dealing with yourself.
But when reaching out
Mm.
to sessions like this
Yeah,
and
yeah,
meeting with people like yourself as a
yeah,
mentor and
yeah,
as a
yeah.
tutor or a teacher, and it's picking up those little lessons and like I did
Mm.
my second session of breath work on
Oh,
Tuesday. So
do,
I'm
mm.
new to breath work and I'm learning that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm still learning yoga, for
Yeah,
balance
yeah, yeah.
and so forth. So I'm
Oh,
doing these little things
yeah.
and trying these new
Oh,
experiences on my own
yeah.
or within a group for
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
yoga. And I say, look, I'm new, I'm not very flexible, but I will give it a try.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the yoga teachers, I don't know what they call themselves, but they're like, okay, we'll work at your pace. Don't
Yeah,
expect to be as
exactly.
advanced as the lady next to you who's been doing it for 15 years.
Yeah, yeah,
You go
yeah.
at your own pace. And I go, okay, thank
Exactly.
you. And I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like understanding that like you create the truth and meaning to what everything means. So like in terms of like personal development, like
Mm,
whatever that means to you is the meaning because it's personal. Just like, for example, there's a difference between religious and spiritual.
yeah.
Religious is a man-made structure.
Yeah.
Spiritual is one's connection to God, the universe, life, like nature,
Everything
whatever it
else.
may
Yeah.
be. So it's sort of in understanding that I determine the rules and the structures to what is positive and what is negative for me. Like, do I feel like I'm succeeding every day because I'm moving towards what I want, or do I feel like failing because I don't have what I want now? Do you
Mm,
know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, I do.
So, like, we get to create this structure of not only our mental landscape, but the environment around us. And through the reticular activation gland, so where focus goes, energy flows. So, like,
Yep.
if I'm thinking about threats, my environment, my eyes are going to be looking for threats and picking up
Mm,
threats. Like, my mind's going to be like sort of set towards it. So, an important thing, like you mentioned with breath work, is I've done a little bit of the Wim Hof. I really like it, but I found from, do you know Andrew Huberman? I don't know
no.
if I say his name right. He's like a neuroscientist, but he mentioned one day about two different breath works that I realized could be utilized for different things. So one of them
Mm,
is a priming breath work, and the other is a sort of like a lowering of the stress. So the priming breath work is 2 second inhale, 1 second exhale. And you just keep doing that on repeat
mm,
for about 40 to 50 breaths, as many as you can do before
yeah.
you, because you think about it like this logically. If I'm breathing in 2 seconds of oxygen, but only breathing out 1 second, what happens to the other second? It's primed in your lungs. So we're over oxygenating our lungs and our blood. So when we think about exercise and things like that, like working out, we can, and I utilized this when I was walking across country when I had to walk up mountain ranges. So to continue at pace, because I did it sort of a bit like a march.
Hmm.
So when you're marching up a steep hill, like it's one of the most exhausting things you can ever do. But if I have oxygen, the lactic acid in my muscles doesn't build as fast.
Mm, true.
So if I'm oxygenating and keeping my body highly oxygenated while I'm in the process, I can increase my performance. But the other thing it does is it's natural. Our breath work is very deeply linked into our like biochemical responses. So
Hmm.
when we do about 50 breaths, it releases our adrenaline gland. So we get a dump of adrenaline. So it's a really easy and quick way to create focus and sort of get yourself into a heightened state, so to speak. So you think clearer, you think faster. So if you find yourself becoming confused or anything like that or distracted, like you can do that. And it's just literally into, out one,
Mm,
and just back and forth. And then to lower stress, we just do the opposite. So we breathe in for two, and then we breathe out for four. So we're
mm.
artificially restricting the amount of oxygen in our blood, which naturally lowers our heart rate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Look, I'm only in week 2 of
Mm.
this is breath work, but enjoying it and
Hmm.
learning. And I don't think she would be my only teacher for breath work. At the moment, she's perfect because she's got a lot of us who are beginners.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
She's
definitely.
walking us through it at a very casual pace,
Yeah.
which suits me personally. But at some point, the student does need another teacher when they advance. So, but that time will come
Sometimes,
when that
but you
comes.
you are also your own teacher.
Yeah, yeah,
So sort of
absolutely.
like I mentioned, like you've got the self, like the body. So breath work, we can just play around with different breaths and measure the experiential changes. So
Yeah,
there's two types of information that we get. One is theoretical, so like written information and spoken information, and the second is experiential, like experiencing being punched in the face.
yeah.
I understand being punched in the face. So it's sort of like if we value the theoretical knowledge too much of people telling us how we have to do things, do you know what I mean? We
Yeah.
we sort of limit ourselves to going out there and experimenting. So fun things to do to just like I use yoga nidra. So, like yoga nidra is just meditating in a comfortable position. So you can
Oh,
lay
okay. Yeah.
down, it's not a proper one, but you
Yep. Yep.
just lay down and like if you point your eyes up to
Yep.
the middle of your mind, you
Yep.
access or you activate your visual stimuli or your visual like so you can create visions. So when we look directly up behind our eyes, we activate the aspect of our mind that shows imagery and vision.
Mm.
So like you lay there and then you can sort of like sort of if we understand consciousness as being a frequency, not something that's created within our mind, it's sort of like a ham radio. The ham radio doesn't hold the only signal of the FM radio.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like the
Mm-hmm.
ham radio just picks it up. Like the signal is coming from
Yeah.
somewhere else, so to speak. So if you think about our mind like consciousness, I can see myself as being singular in this universe, as I am only connected to what's within my body, or I can see myself as understanding I'm a part of the energetic fields and frequencies that are around me. So if I access my visual stimuli and then I go into a meditation and I connect with the knowledge that is around me, I can learn anything that I want to learn. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like anything I want to experience within myself, I can, I can ask life to show me, or I can ask myself to show me. Like essentially, it's a hard thing to explain, but essentially when we talk to ourselves, like we're talking to everything
Yeah.
because the way thoughts sort of operate is when we get into quantum mechanics and understanding quantum entanglement, like thoughts can influence physical matter or particles,
Yeah.
different frequencies. So, like, we can connect with information that we have not observed yet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
do.
it's
I do.
it's sort of it's through that process that we activate our creativity and we find like what suits us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I do. I do. Yeah. I get it.
yeah. Because that's what I found personally was a lot of the time I spent listening to personal development, listening to motivational speeches, listening to all this different stuff and learning, but I was never really doing. So at a certain point, like we learn to be comfortable, but the only way through is to do.
Mm.
So it's sort of like the only way to sort of master my emotional state and my emotions is to sort of sit there and deal with it. Like there's no point sort of trying to avoid it because the more we avoid it, sort of like I created this process and it's for pain association. So understanding and conceptualizing and experiencing the difference in pain or how
Hmm.
to how to how to basically associate pain to pleasure. So basically, I walk barefoot along a stony road, and
Yeah.
it's a march, and you got
Yeah.
to walk like sternly. So you're
Yeah.
sort of stomping your feet on the ground. And the whole point of the walk isn't that the pain goes away. It's that every step is as painful as the last, but at a certain point, it doesn't really matter. Like the pain doesn't really control us. We can move on with our life even if we're in pain.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I do.
So it's sort of like in understanding how to experience the sensation and what is happening helps us to conceptualize it. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So like anything that you're wanting to learn or to develop within yourself, it's sort of like being able to conceptualize it helps us to understand and visualize the thing. So when you do the breath work, it's creating like visual images. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of what it's doing in your body and sort of, and this is part of like yoga. If you get into because yoga is all about understanding the body, mind, the
Mm.
spirit, like the energy. So it's all about my focus. I can focus on the external environment and I can observe, I can analyze all the different experiences. But it's sort of like if I turn that inwards, now when I look at a blade of grass, how do I feel? Like, how do I think? Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? And analyze that to understand it. So it's sort of like with personal development, it's that self-analyzation, that self-reflection, and just like sort of talking to yourself and understanding yourself that allows us to do it. So, like, for example, when I eat consciously, if I eat a meal and I'm conscious about how that meal makes me feel energy wise, how it makes me feel digestion wise, and all of that, like I have more understanding about the foods I eat. Do you know what I mean? If I just eat
Yeah.
for taste, I just know what foods taste like.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like it's about finding and molding these processes and practices you learn to how you like it to be.
Mm.
So, for example, with yoga, I'm not really flexible. So, like when I meditate, I don't like I just lay down and be
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Like there's many things, and I believe them, but basically the positioning of the body alters the energetic frequencies or something like that.
Hmm.
So it's sort of like, but I would rather be comfortable when I meditate. So it's sort of like I
Yeah.
meditate how I want to meditate. Just
Yeah.
like, for example, exercising, I really enjoy walking. I don't want to have to run. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I just walk.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like making it as easy for you to do it day after day,
Mm.
like Atomic Habits teaches, creates a habit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do. I do.
Yeah. And then it's just about like just practicing it until you sort of become your own master and teacher. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I get that. So, look, I'm just aware of time
Yeah,
because
no, that's all good.
it's
I do these five days a week. This is just a way I like to serve, is I like to talk and
no,
things
no,
like
no,
that.
absolutely not dismissing
So
anything.
you can feel free to join in any day.
Yeah, yeah, I will.
Um,
I'll gladly attend. I need my phone's blowing up. I need
yeah,
to
yeah,
eat
that's all
because
right.
it's lunchtime here. I was gonna
Yeah,
say this is around at so this will be 11 o'clock Melbourne time because I'm in Melbourne,
yeah,
which will be
yeah,
10 o'clock Brisbane time, and that's Monday to Friday, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, Monday to
Yeah,
Friday. And
yeah,
then I just record these and
yeah,
I post them up. So
yeah.
basically you can rewatch them if there's anything you think about and things like that.
Okay,
I
yeah,
just find I find showing people the process and how to do it. So like
yeah,
for example, showing people how you conceptualize and understand can help them conceptualize and understand.
yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah, it's a
that's all
pretty
good.
cool
That's all
thing.
good. Do you regularly get more participants on certain days, or is it usually one on one? Or
No, it's usually